What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and a brand new review series. With the upcoming release of Prey, I'm going to first discuss all 4 of the other Predator movies. And once I get to my review of Prey, I'm going to rank all 5 of the Predator films. So, we're kicking things off with the original 1987's Predator. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie are, if you already saw it or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie related content like the rest of this review series on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time and let's talk about Predator. This sees a team of commandos on a mission in a Central American jungle who find themselves hunted by an extraterrestrial warrior. This is directed by John McTiernan, and what's interesting about this film's origins was that it actually originated as part of a joke, and one not even related to a different Arnold Schwarzenegger character. In fact, it originated from a joke based around Rocky Balboa, with someone saying he should fight an alien in his next movie, at the time being Rocky V. And given how that film actually was, maybe they should have taken that advice, but that's a story for another day. But the screenwriters, brothers Jim and John Thomas, went with that joke and actually made a whole screenplay based on it, though the producers wound up immediately going with Schwarzenegger instead of Sylvester Stallone, so not sure what happened there, but hey, we did get Apollo Creed himself, Carl Weathers, in one of the big supporting roles here, so there's at least that consolation. And while reviews for this weren't necessarily glowing at the time, it at least paved the way for a whole franchise that not only included the sequels I'll be speaking about in later videos, but also novels, comic books, video games, and toys. It's now considered one of the best monster movies ever made, one of the best action movies ever made, and one of the best horror movies ever made. And I've always loved this movie. I was in high school when I first checked it out, and I always had an absolute blast with it. I never found it to be scary necessarily. I think it's definitely more of an action movie first and a horror movie second, and even then it's a little light on the horror elements, but it still works great as a gripping, to the point thrill ride, and I still enjoy it a lot to this day. And that's a great place to start. This is a pretty straightforward, mostly fast-paced action movie that wastes no time getting right into things. I wouldn't call it short necessarily, as it does clock in at 107 minutes, but as far as its setup, it doesn't spend too much time at all getting bogged down in exposition. Schwarzenegger's character Dutch gets recruited for this mission. It's like one quick scene that establishes who he is and who Carl Weathers' character is, and then they're on their way, and not even 10 minutes in, we see these characters doing their thing. And it's about a half hour in before the Predator actually starts attacking them, as we actually see them go through with what they were sent out to do, with a lot of the film taking place on their way back to their rendezvous point. But even with an extensive focus on this mission in the first 30 minutes, the film still doesn't feel slow, as we do see the Predator lurking in the background at various points, with some POV shots of it waiting to attack at just the right time, and that builds our tension and suspense right out of the gate. And in this time, we at least get to explore a little bit of the dynamic among this group. This isn't exactly a character-heavy movie per se, but at the very least, most of the characters among this little group do have distinct personalities and a nice camaraderie together. You also have Bill Duke, Jesse Ventura, Sonny Landau, who you might also know as one of the villains from 48 Hours, Richard Chavez, and one who I'm surprised to see pop up as an actor here, Shane Black, who I enjoy a lot for his skills as a writer and director. But here, he's a good bit of fun as an actor, playing the radio operator whose whole shtick is that he tells corny but vulgar jokes centered around puns. It's not the biggest role, but it was cool to see him pop up for a little bit here. And then things get moving pretty quickly once facing off against the Predator becomes the focal point for the rest of the movie, and it's fun. I'd say this finds the right mix of being a little dark and on the edge of your seat so that you can take the story seriously, while also having all those typical 80s one-liners that you'd especially get in a lot of action movies at the time that cut the tension and allow the experience to not feel dour. You have a few memorable lines here that get quoted pretty frequently, like "get to the chopper" and "if it bleeds, we can kill it." Plus, there is one moment that's not a quote, but it has now gone on to become the basis of one of the most popular memes out there when we see Schwarzenegger and Weathers meet, so that's cool. Though, even with the lines that aren't as highly quoted, there are some really solid exchanges, like one early on between Bill Duke and Carl Weathers where the latter almost gives their position away and Duke tries intimidating him. And the injection of all those little quips didn't undercut any of the tension or take away from the moment, especially as this was a fairly standard occurrence for all these 80s action movies. Tonally, it just fit all together, and it still provided gripping entertainment that took itself seriously enough, but also knew what it was. It's the sort of stuff you just roll with, and you kinda had to, given some of the effects here, which I guess we should also get into. Parts of this movie will look really cool, while others admittedly will look a little dated. The actual costume for the Predator I thought looked great. I'm always big on practical effects in film, and I thought this gave the character the right menacing look for something as quick and powerful as it is, and the costume itself didn't look hokey, so that was good. Though on the other hand, the visual effects to replicate it blending within its environment and its thermal vision and the lasers it shoots out, those could have been a little better, to be quite honest. I'm sure it's one of those things that was probably fine for the time, and I know the way the visual effects team pulled it together was very commendable. It's just, it looks dated as anything. It's nothing I'm sure they could have necessarily helped, as that was just the technology at the time, so it's really not the biggest deal, but it's still worth pointing out. But I mean, otherwise, as I said, this is just a fun action horror. Having Schwarzenegger in the lead is always a blast for all the quips and one-liners he throws in there, as I mentioned earlier. Plus, the action scenes were great, and I especially like the final showdown between Schwarzenegger and the Predator. That's always an excellent sequence every time I watch it. Though I also liked how not every scene was filled with so much over-the-top exposition and destruction, but whenever we did get one of those moments, it would hit hard, with the Predator picking everyone off one by one like we were in a slasher movie, usually in pretty creative ways. Certainly not the bloodiest movie out there by a long shot or anything, especially as some of these moments of the Predator attacking would be so quick, but they were all still effective. Now, that flow of being a little low-key 1 minute before going all out the next does cause this movie to maybe meander just a little towards the middle. Like, once we get introduced to Elpidia Carrillo as Anna, who's someone our characters capture while on their mission, there's some exposition with her character that I don't think was conveyed in the most engaging way, to be quite honest, and it does drag things out just a touch, especially as this otherwise isn't really an exposition or a particularly dense film, but besides this, it's mostly paced fine. And honestly, it works just fantastic as nothing more than being that fun action horror that keeps things pretty simple. Now, some of the other memorable monster movies of the time, like Alien or The Thing, some of that chilling paranoia did touch upon some light thematic elements, but you don't quite get that here. Though the scenes of Bill Duke's character in particular losing his mind as he's bent on revenge once the Predator starts killing people off were really intense. But otherwise, that's it. As I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's really not this deep exploration of anything too meaningful. You don't get a huge explanation of why the Predator does what it does, outside of the fact that it's a hunter and it seems to enjoy hunting people who are specifically armed for sport. But otherwise, it's just the Predator versus this one group of commandos, and you have fun with it due to the creative nature of the action scenes and the fun personalities of each of these characters. And that can actually go a long way. Even with each successive rewatch, because these moments are so memorable, it really doesn't get old, at least for me. So this manages to be so entertaining despite not being the heaviest on plot or having any sort of deep character development. And as I said previously, not every movie needs to be the deepest or most profound in order to be great. Sometimes being just to the point, but in a really creative or engaging manner, is more than enough, whether it be because of the stylization, the specific actors involved, the line deliveries, or whatever it may be. But it works, and I think this film manages to achieve such an effect. Predator is an action movie classic, and it's one of the best Arnold Schwarzenegger movies out there. It's a straightforward and to-the-point story, but it's still incredibly effective due to the creativity that went into its action-heavy sequences. It's briskly paced, with there rarely being a dull moment. It's a lot of fun, with some great 80s cheesy quips thrown in there, and to this day, it remains a staple in the monster movie genre. Predator gets a 9 out of 10. So stay tuned, as up next will be my review of the sequel, Predator 2. But in the meantime, let me know, did you see Predator, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Is this one of your favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies? Is it one of your favorite action movies? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.